Hello, everybody. It is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our weekly appearance on the PG Penn State YouTube channel by Paul Zeise, our Post-Gazette sports columnist. Lots of P words there, Paul. I tripped up a little bit. This show is presented by FanDuel. We're going to be talking about Indiana, Penn State, the game this weekend, and maybe the big picture that Indiana is presenting. So that's where I want to start, actually, Paul, Is Indiana a big picture threat to Penn State beyond just this season? Is this a kind of 2-season lightning in the bottle type of run for Curt Cignetti where, really threatening seriously? I believe they're the number 2 team in the CFP rankings this week. Obviously make the CFP last season as well. Are we going to remember this as a short burst before, maybe Indiana settles in as like a 7-5 team, better than it's been historically, not a laughing stock, but maybe not a super credible national threat either? Or is this a program that has that old money, deep pockets type of stuff that can succeed in the age of NIL and is going to become maybe a closer upper middle class peer to Penn State in the years to come?
Well, I mean, I would say, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the idea is Indiana probably does have a burst, and then they settle back into being Indiana and all that other stuff. But, Adam, it's all changed now, hasn't it? I mean, it's one of those things where I keep reading that they've got money to spend in Indiana. They seem to have a good coach. I don't know if their brand is sustainable from the standpoint of I can't imagine a ton of people want to go play there, with their facilities is not as, nice as some other places. But by the same token, apparently they've spent a bunch of money on their facilities. They spent a bunch of money on their program. I don't know if it's sustainable that they're going to be number 2 in the country every year, but it won't shock me if they're good now for, as long as Cignetti is there. What has he got, a 7 or 8 year deal? And they're good and they, have 9, 8, 9, 10 wins every year and have an opportunity to make runs like this. Just because the game has changed so much. And what I've read about Indiana is they have made a financial investment. So if you've made a financial investment and you're willing to pay and you're willing to get, money for NIL and do all that good stuff, yeah, it's absolutely sustainable. There's a couple things that probably I know a lot of old school, college football types are going to hate to hear, but things like facilities probably don't matter as much. Things like your tradition probably don't matter as much. Every single one of these kids want to know, how much am I going to get paid? And as long as Indiana is willing to do it, he seems like a really good coach. They're going to have an opportunity to sort of maintain this a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't want to push the panic button here as a Penn State observer and say, oh, Penn State can't compete with Indiana. I think they're going to surpass them. But I do think that this is emerging as maybe one of the programs that you are going to have to take more seriously. Are they going to take the spot of an Iowa? Well, maybe not Iowa because Iowa's pretty solid still, but are they going to take the spot of a Michigan State from a decade ago? Are they going to take the spot of a Wisconsin from a decade ago? That kind of upper middle class of the Big Ten that's not necessarily going to be a national championship threat every single year, but that you can't. Penn State's never lost to Indiana at Beaver Stadium, Paul. I think Isaiah Maldonado pointed that out on our podcast. I think it's like 25-2 or something all time. There was that one game, I think one game in the sanction era, and then one game in 2020 during the pandemic where Penn State lost. But otherwise, this is an also ran Big Ten program, and it seems like it is taking a step out of that. How far out of that, I guess we'll see. But that's why I think makes this game interesting for Penn State from a program perspective, Paul. Of okay, you have nothing to play for this year, right? Maybe a bowl game. Maybe you're going to go to the Pinstripe Bowl if you can scrape together 6 wins and beat some of these teams here at the end of the schedule. But there's nothing really at stake for Penn State big picture in the season. But in terms of maintaining order in the Big Ten, this is still somewhat of a – you want to be able to beat this team and say, yeah, we still got Indiana's number, right? Especially as 14.5-point underdogs. It's the biggest spread Penn State's faced at home in 9 years, according to our friends at FanDuel. So I do think on a program level, there's something to play for here, if not a 2025 team level.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, listen, Penn State, I mean, as you just pointed out, has nothing really left to play for. I mean, I guess they could play for a bowl game. But my thing about it is, with the bowl game is nowadays, Adam, are they going to have a team that you're going to be able to put together to go play in a bowl game? Because any of these coaching change situations, as soon as the season's over, everybody's looking to hit the transfer portal and get out of there. It's obviously a big game for Penn State. I don't know that it big picture means much more than, hey, we can still beat Indiana. Even in our weakened state and where we're at, we can still beat Indiana in their best season ever. But I think Penn State needs to really focus in on, trying to just finish the season strong, trying to keep some semblance of the roster together, and then hoping, beyond hope, that they go out and make the right coaching hire. It probably makes it probably does help just sort of the overall feeling about the program probably if you win this game, but I don't think losing it is devastating either.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, Penn State moved on from that 2020 loss, obviously, and had a nice run here before everything hit the skids this season. Paul, do you think Curt Cignetti is completely out of the conversation now? I think we talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago and said, $12 million seems like a lot to give a guy. Since then, I believe the LSU and Florida openings have both, hit the market. Maybe you get a couple more big name programs in the market. I think Auburn is now or could be. So there's going to be a lot of bidding between these major programs for some coaching talent. Is $12 million too much to give a Curt Cignetti, or a $13 million to pull him out of Indiana? Could you still do that? Because I think it's possible they may make Indiana tear up this deal if they really want to keep him. Tear up this deal he literally just signed to keep him there.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I guess I'm a sucker, but I feel like if you listen to what Curt Cignetti said, he probably is just. I mean, if he was 55 or 56, I'd probably feel differently. But he's 60. What is he? 64 years old. He just got a really nice retirement handed to him at a place that he seems to like. I'd be shocked. I guess someone could come and say, we'll give you $20 million. It'd be different. But I'd be shocked if there's any more activity with him this year. And quite frankly, maybe even beyond. I just feel like, some guys really kind of understand it. He's a guy that worked his tail off, to go to climb all the way up the ladder to get to where he's at. He wasn't one of these guys that was, like Danny Lanning, a whiz kid, and some of these other guys who, were able to ascend the ladder really quickly and really probably never had to do the, riding the bus, so to speak. I mean, Curt Cignetti has been a guy who's had to play, play the game. And at some point he, has been in places where he's, making almost no money and just sort of grinding his way up. So I'm just saying, when you look at it, I would be shocked if someone were able to pull him out of Indiana.
We'll see how that unfolds. Paul, I did want to get your thoughts on another few names that have been percolating this week in some Penn State circles. I think that guy at Barstool, I'll come up with his name in a second here while you're talking, said that he's heard that Mike Elko has been is not saying no to Penn State. Obviously, his team's number 3 in the country at Texas A&M. I think that makes it difficult for me to imagine Mike Elko being the guy, because they could be going on an extended CFP run and all that stuff you mentioned in the previous segment about, guys are going to be hitting the portal. You want a coach that's there to recruit those guys from those school, every other school. Once all that action starts happening, it doesn't matter what's going on in the CFP. For most of these programs, the offseason starts the next day. So what are your thoughts on Mike Elko as a potential candidate at Penn State? And we'll get to a couple other names that have popped up.
I mean, he's obviously, I think, a really good football coach. And he apparently has some ties to the East Coast. Isn't he from like New Jersey or something? So, I mean, if Penn State's able to land, put it this way, if Penn State's able to land him, then that's whoever is in charge of this, that is one heck of a search. and you ended up really hitting a home run in terms of being able to adequately replace James Franklin. But he's another guy, man. He's at Texas A&M. They're willing to spend whatever it takes to win. They don't care. Maybe he says, hey, it's a little easier in the Big Ten than the SEC. I mean, just because of the depth of the SEC. But I don't know. That would be a name that would surprise me. Put it that way.
Also wanted to ask you about Clark Lee at Vanderbilt and then Brent Key at Georgia Tech. I will say I've watched a fair amount of Georgia Tech, and until this weekend, I was very impressed. Haynes King's always been I love that guy as a player. And maybe he's like, a rare type of guy, and it's going to be difficult to replicate that success without him. A veteran guy who takes as much abuse as he does and just continues to go forward. I like what they've done as programs. I don't know if you can hire another Vanderbilt guy, Paul. I don't know if you can go to that well twice in a row. Can you?
Well, and he's also that's his alma mater, so that's something else you have to consider. And he's from Nashville too. That's the thing. He was born and raised there, so he's at home at a place where he doesn't have a ton of pressure. Georgia Tech's guy is interesting to me. He seems to be a lot more just, hot air bravado than he is actually. I don't. But you know what? His teams play well. They're organized. They play tough man football. I mean, if that would probably play well at Penn State if he brought that style of football up to Penn State. It'd be sort of a throwback for them. But I think you could do worse than him. I honestly, all these names are great, but the guy that would intrigue me the most would be what's his name, Hartline, the offensive coordinator from Ohio State. I think you take a page out of Oregon's book, go get a really hot young name coordinator and let him run and let him, just let him go.
Yeah, I think Brian Hartline's a name that a lot of people at Penn State probably didn't begin the search thinking about a guy like him. But once you pointed out what his resume was and how involved he really was with what Ohio State has become, and not even just in the years that they were winning national championships, just in terms of developing that talent. I think he has a very compelling story to tell, and I think these younger guys have an edge in terms of understanding where the sport is going. That's why guys like Nick Saban, I found it ridiculous, Paul, didn't you, when there were suggestions that Urban Meyer and Nick Saban were going to hop back in they got these nice TV gigs. Why would they come back to Penn State? Why are they parts of the conversation and not these younger guys that kind of know how the game is played now? Right.
Well, no, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous when you start naming guys that have made it very clear they're done playing. They've made it very clear. I mean, they're probably done coaching, but more importantly, I don't like the. I think honestly, if you're a place like Penn State, those names are safe because they've had success. But I'm a guy who, and a lot of ADs think that way. By the way, I'm a guy. If I'm intrigued by a young guy, I'm going to give him a shot. And I think, that's what way I go. But again, those names are safe. They're always safe. That's why they're always in the conversation. I mean, John Gruden, when was the last time he coached? But every cycle, his name's just thrown in there, right? Because, he has had some success over the years. I mean, you think
those years are well in the past, don't you?
Right.
I think 2002 was the Super Bowl he won, right?
I think
that's a long time ago.
But my point is, that's how some people think, So that's the way it is.
Yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. I think John Gruden would be a wild hire for Penn State, so we'll keep an eye on all that. Thank you for joining me this week, Paul. We'll be back next week. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And please consider a subscription over at post-gazette.com for our written coverage. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.